I've been on self-improvement for quite some time, and yet I still don't like the 1% better everyday mentality. So in this video, I'm going to do two things. Number one, I'm going to explain why I dislike and distrust the 1% better everyday mentality. And number two, I'm going to explain what I believe in instead. But before we get started, what is the 1% better everyday mentality about? Well, it's simple. It comes down to this. Small improvements over time stack to yield exponential results. That means if you focus on getting better, a tiny bit better, every single day, then you will see much more progress than someone who does something with very much intensity, but only once a month. At face value, that is true. But life isn't as simple. So the first reason why I distrust the 1% better everyday mentality is that it actually keeps you trapped within your comfort zone. So the 1% better everyday mentality stresses incremental improvements. It means you get a tiny bit better every day. But the thing is, in order to see progress, we actually need to become a lot better every day. Let me explain. Let's say you go to the gym and you have been going to the gym for a while. After a while, you don't have the noob gains anymore. So every kilogram that you gain is an improvement. But the thing is, this improvement in weight is worthless if the fact that you can't do cold approaches keeps you awake at night. So that means we actually need to do things that we aren't used to doing to solve problems we don't know how to solve. If increasing the weight were the solution to getting hot blondes, then you would have already gotten there by getting better at the gym. But the thing is, to solve that problem, we actually need to do something different. But the 1% better everyday mentality convinces you that you don't need to do different, but that you just need to commit to the things that you already know how to do. So although it is difficult to increase the weight at the gym, if the fact that you can't cold approach keeps you awake at night, then that is kind of pointless. The gym in this case is already explored territory, you could say. And so in that sense, it is no longer outside of your actual comfort zone. But all the progress to be made in life lies outside of your actual comfort zone, not on the pretend comfort zone that the 1% better everyday mentality would summon. So, in order to get real progress, we have to do things that we don't know how to do. We have to do different rather than just doubling down on the things that we already know how to do. Because remember the definition of insanity. It's doing the same things over and over again while expecting a different result. And I believe that this is what the 1% better everyday mentality does. It convinces you that you just need to lock in a bit more and then your life will be different. But that's just not the case. You have to do different to see new and better results. In some cases, of course, double down. But if you face a different problem, you have to do different things. Now, the second reason why I don't like the 1% better everyday mentality is that it focuses you on preparing rather than focusing you on winning. A lot of people aren't on self-improvement and they still do remarkably well in life. Why do you think that is? Well, I can tell you one of those reasons. And one of those reasons is that they don't care about getting better. They care about winning. And so the 1% mentality guy would, for instance, focus on building skills whilst the non-self-improvement guy would focus on getting the jobs that he wants. And which approach is more effective? Well, I would say the approach where you focus on winning will yield more results than the one where you focus on getting better. Because if you focus on winning, you automatically get better. But if you focus on getting better, you don't necessarily win. because in order to then win, you still have to take risks. And so let me give you an example to make very clear what I mean by the focus on preparation rather than the focus on winning. Let's return to the gym/looks maxing example. A lot of people, or basically 99.999% of people, go to the gym to be more attractive. But the thing is, the gym is just a tiny part of life. And so if you try to become more attractive using the gym, then the goal will actually move further away. So that means you get a bit of a physique and you convince yourself that you need more physique to then be able to ask out the hot blondes. Or you do looks maxing, you look 1% better every day. But then the goal just moves further into the future. And so it happens that because you focused on preparation, you never start to think that you are ready. And so you never actually focus on winning. You actually never do the things that are necessary to get to the next level. So that means the looks maxer will looks max and will never feel right to ask out the hot blondes. And the gym goer will go to the gym without ever feeling ready to then ask out the hot blondes. And so it is much easier to focus on winning rather than focusing on preparing to win. This is the second reason why I distrust the 1% better every day mentality. The third reason why I dislike the 1% better every day mentality is because why should you constrain yourself to tiny improvements when you can have massive improvements? Why should you obsess about building habits and systems when you can instead ask yourself what you're building these systems and habits for? Let me explain. In 2020, I was 13 years old and I stood before a decision. I could either study better to get accepted into like a top university, or I could redefine the playing field and just skip a grade. Guess what I chose? I chose the second option where I redefined the playing field because it's just a lot simpler to get these 10x improvements and to do the 1% improvements every day. So it is much easier to write an email saying, hey, I am too smart, I want to skip a grade, than it is to study every day, to become better at studying, to develop systems, to sleep better, to do the nutrition, to do the gym. It is a lot simpler to just skip a grade than it is to become good at studying, because guess what? Your competition is focused on studying better. And so I believe that it is better to take the bold risks and to redefine the playing field than it is to try to get good at a game because everyone else is trying to get good at a game. And so I wrote an email where I said I want to skip a grade. It took an hour to write that email, but I got a year of my life back. I saved a year of effort because I spent an hour writing that email. This is completely outside of the 1% better everyday mentality, because the 1% better everyday mentality would convince you that you actually need to become better at studying, that you need to change your identity, that you need to develop habits and all that kind of stuff. But why, when you can just spend an hour writing an email to then not have to do any of that exhausting stuff? You see, I believe that the 1% mentality is very, very exhausting. And let me tell you, the billionaires, the immense high performers, obviously don't live by the 1% better everyday mentality, because otherwise it would be impossible to attain such a level, because you just feel so exhausted all the time. But somehow these billionaires are very chill. So obviously they're doing something different. And I'm telling you, they aren't trying to win at games. They're instead constructing the games, or deconstructing, or redefining the games. While everyone else is competing for the same goals, the high performers redefine what those goals are. And so this is why I believe in actually finding 10x improvements rather than 1% improvements. 1% improvements are completely negligible when the alternative is redefining the playing game, the playing field. The fourth reason why I don't like the 1% better everyday mentality is that you force one concept to apply to life as a whole. Like when you have this 1% better everyday mentality, you assume that you just need to do more in order to see more results. But when we look at actual life, it's not quite as simple, because no one actually does the habits that would make them 1% better every day. And it isn't even possible to become 1% better every day. It's more like you become 50, then 20, then 10, then 1, then 0.1, then 0.01% better every day. So I understand that this is not entirely what the 1% better everyday mentality is about. But I would say the fourth reason why I don't like it is that it doesn't do a very great job at describing reality. And so the bottom line is this. I don't like the 1% mentality because it traps you within your comfort zone, because it focuses you on preparation rather than on winning, because it stresses incremental improvements rather than massive leaps forward, and it also forces one concept to apply to life as a whole. So ultimately, I would say that the 1% better everyday mentality is exhausting and not particularly effective at delivering results, unless, of course, this is the great exception, you want to become a professional athlete. Then, of course, the 1% better everyday mentality is the way forward. But in basically all other situations, this is not the philosophy to have. And let me tell you something else. I suspect that the 1% better everyday mentality is so popular because it is easy to explain it using the athlete examples, and it is also easy to convince people that they don't actually need to do anything new, but that they can just remain within their comfort zone, and then everything will be alright, which is of course not how it works. Because as we've discussed, all the progress that matters lies outside of the things that we already know how to do. All the things that we need to, that would make us get to the next level, are the things that we don't know how to do, otherwise we would already be at the next level. So fundamentally, instead of viewing life as becoming 1% better every day, I prefer to view life as a series of 10x improvements. I like to see life as a series of bets that you take with small risk, but that can yield immense upward potential. So instead of asking myself, where can I be 1% better tomorrow? I asked myself, what would it take to 10x my life? What would it take to get to the next level? This is the much better philosophy because it is flexible. That means you don't get this attachment to identity, to ego, to your habits and stuff like that. And you see life as a whole, rather than seeing just the gym, just your social skills, or anything else that you might want to improve at. You see the whole playing field, and as a result, you see moves on the board that others didn't even know existed. I also like the 10x mentality because it is guaranteed to maximize progress. Because once again, you don't get stuck within your comfort zone or your extended comfort zone, but you instead see the actual things you need to do to get better. And chances are you will also see that you are not nearly good enough to do those things. But this is where you will actually grow in pursuit of those things rather than in the pursuit of becoming 1% better every day. The third reason why this 10x philosophy is better is because it is less exhausting. You know, the 1% better every day mentality would convince you that you need to fill every single minute of your day to become better. But the 10x mentality poses a different question. If you did just one thing this month, what would it be? Like, for instance, you could, of course, spend all your day studying, or once again, you could write that email and skip a grade. If you did just one thing, that one email in this month, that would be a much more successful month than if you did all this studying, all this kind of stuff, and you know. So let me give you 3 examples of the 10x mentality that are easy to explain because they were exceptionally short but yielded immense results. The first example we've already touched is the one where I wrote an email and then got to skip 9th grade, and so I finished high school at 16 years old. The second is one that I did in 2024. In 2024, I finished high school, and after finishing high school, I noticed that my social skills were kind of low, and that the business that I had started in 2020 failed in 2023 because I didn't have enough social skills. So I decided to do 100 cold approaches to overcome both the fear of rejection, the fear of cold approaches, and to get better at talking to people. And that's exactly what I did. After 4 days, I was done, and my social skills doubled in just 4 days. It would have taken me perhaps a year or 2 years had I not done that. So I saw 1 or 2 years of progress in just 4 days. And then let me give you the third example that I actually did yesterday. So there was this event that I wanted to attend but could because I had to hold a speech somewhere else. And this was like a job event. But you know, when you apply online, you have like a 99% chance of getting rejected. But what was special about this event is that on the event's website, you could see the name and the email addresses of the employees working at those companies. So I took 15 minutes to write down the names and the email addresses of the people working at the companies so that I could apply to them directly rather than using the company's website. Because on the company's website, you have like this crazy rejection rate. But if you apply to the people themselves, your rejection rate is a lot smaller, like maybe 80% instead of 99%. But this is like 20 times less chance of getting rejected, which is immense. I don't know where this will bring me because I have not yet applied anywhere because that was yesterday. But I do believe that this will bring immense return on investment, because think of this. If I get accepted somewhere, then I may see many things and then find out what I want to do in my life. I may get a better resume so that I can then have better chances elsewhere, and it's just an upward trajectory. And you know, this writing down the emails for 15 minutes could be a 10x jump. This also has nothing to do with becoming 1% better every day, because it is not this that you become 1% better every day. It's just that you have more access to opportunities, and so you have this a lot greater potential to see those massive jumps. This is why I prefer it. And now, how do we adopt the 10x mentality? Well, I have 5 questions that you can ask yourself in order to get used to viewing life through this 10x lens. The first is to ask yourself, what's the biggest thing holding me back? Chances are the biggest thing holding you back is not increasing the weight by 2.5 kilograms, but the fact that you don't sleep well, that you have health problems, that you can't pull, that you are about to fail the exams. Those things are most likely to hold you back, and not doing your bench press from 90 kilograms to 92 kilograms. Then the second type of that, the second question to adopt the 10x mentality is, if I did just one thing this month, what would it be? Or if I did just one thing this week, what would it be? Or if I did one thing today, what would it be? As we've already discussed, the 1% better everyday mentality forces you to kind of fill every single minute, while the 10x mentality forces you to see purpose. It forces you to actually do what will bring you forward, rather than doing occupational therapy where you convince yourself that you're making progress whilst you're actually coping. The third question that you can ask yourself to adopt the 10x mentality is this: which conversation am I avoiding? Many things you want, the gap between you and many things that you want is one hard conversation. Have that conversation to get to the next level. The fourth question to ask yourself to adopt the 10x mentality is this: over the last week, or over the last month, what problem has bothered you the most? Write down all the problems that bother you, and then you have a list of things to improve. Very simple, very highly recommend that tip. The final question you can ask yourself is, what would it take for me to 10x that thing? The beauty of asking for big improvements is that you rethink everything. When you want small improvements, you increment. When you want big improvements, you innovate. And all the progress in life comes from these big jumps, rather than the tiny improvements you make living in your mom's basement, pretending that you're making progress. And so, to summarize this video, you have to bet big in order to see big results. You don't need to become 1% better every day, unless of course you want to become a professional athlete. But outside of that, seek the big improvements rather than the incremental improvements that are still within your comfort zone. So my name is Krill. My goal is to inspire 10,000 good decisions. If this video helped you, subscribe and we'll see you in the next one.